Great Scott!
Are you a sports fan who loves to have a good laugh?
Oh, yeah!
Then you're in the right place.
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
Life moves pretty fast.
Patriots win the
Welcome
Super Bowl!
to the Man Cave Chronicles.
Brady has his fifth!
Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles podcast, a podcast of talk culture where everyone has a story. My guest today, well, you've seen him in everything. Batman, Good Morning Vietnam, Arliss, Bull Durham. I can keep going with this list. My guest, Robert Wuhl. Robert, welcome to the cave.
Hello. Hello, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah. How are things with you? How's 2018 treating you?
It's been okay. The weather's miserable, but it's been miserable everywhere. So it's very bizarre, this so-called spring so far.
Yeah, I mean, I woke up today, it was all ice outside.
Yeah, it's pouring here. It's been, I mean, yesterday was it Saturday afternoon, it was 70 degrees.
Yep.
By Saturday night, it was like 38.
I know, I was outside playing with my kids, and it was all, setting up soccer nets and all that stuff and putting things away yesterday. So, you were born in New Jersey. How was it growing up there?
Loved it. Had a great life. I'm very fortunate. I grew up in suburbia New Jersey. Had great parents. I went to really good schools and in Union, New Jersey, which I liked, but I couldn't wait to get out of. But I had a great time growing up. I did all the normal things pretty much. I played a lot of softball and basketball and football, and I just enjoyed sports a lot. Enjoyed theater. I was very fortunate. My parents exposed me to a lot of stuff, and I was very fortunate. Terrific childhood.
Yeah. What made you want to get out of New Jersey?
Well, I wanted to be in show business, and that wasn't going to happen in New Jersey. I wanted Los Angeles and New York, and so that's what I always wanted.
Yeah. What made you pursue in acting and in comedy?
Well, actually, I wanted to be a writer and director, but I didn't know how to do that back then. So first I had to go to college. And I went to college at the University of Houston in Texas because they accepted me, which I didn't have great grades. And there was a war going on, to be perfectly frank, and I had to go to college. So I went down there, and I really enjoyed it, and I crammed 4 years into 7. I loved school, but I hated class. But I made great friends down there, and I participated in the latter part of I was in the Durham department. I was always involved in intramural sports and dorm activities and everything. And then I came back after 7 years. I came back to New Jersey and started auditioning and going to the comedy. This is when the comedy clubs just opened up.
Yeah.
It was just when they had been open for a while, but they were kind of getting a boom then because of guys like David Brenner and Freddie Prinze and Robert Klein. And so the improvisation and Catch a Rising Star. And I thought that, and Saturday Night Live was just starting up. It was been on a year or two. And so I thought this is a way for me to segue into what I want to do, because Woody Allen had been a stand-up comic. Mel Brooks had been a stand-up comic. So I did that, and I started writing. I started, writing jokes and performing it, and I sold a couple of jokes to Rodney Dangerfield, which gave me a leg up. And that's how I got started.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time you performed?
Yes.
How did that go?
Yeah. Not bad. Actually, it was pretty good. It was at the Livingston Y. I learned, and it went pretty good. It went pretty good. Good enough for me to do it again. And you learn, and of course, you're always doing somebody. When you first go on, I was probably doing a little Rodney, a little Woody Allen, because you're emulating the people you like.
Yeah. Until
you find your own voice. And but I moved. I got in, and I became a part of a group of comics at that time. And my class, so to speak, was people like Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld, Keenan Wayans, Paul Reiser, George Wallace. We had good people there. And the class before us had been like Jay Leno and Elaine Boozler and Andy Kaufman. So we had good, and it was tough. It was really tough because there was only 2 or 3 places you could work for nothing, basically. And you had to be pretty good because it was like 50, 60 comics maybe. And, there was only like 10 spots. So you better be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just starting to, explode then. Within a year, Robin Williams comes on, and so I was fortunate to be a part of that whole wave.
Yeah. How did you transition from like working in the comedy world? Like you decided one day you wanted to like pursue more of acting.
Well, I had an acting background. I was in the drama department, and I had great teachers. My acting department in Houston had Dennis Quaid was my classmate. Randy Quaid was before me. Cindy Pickett, a guy named Brent Spiner, who started in 1776 on Broadway. A great acting teacher. We had a great acting program with Jim Parsons came later, but Houston had they had a great acting teacher, a guru named Cecil Pickett, who was known as the Strasbourg of the South. And he was just terrific. Guys like Tommy Schlamme and Tommy Toon and great people worked with him. So he was a really terrific. So I had a great background in acting because I had taken classes from this guy. And I had done school. I was always acting in school productions or in shows down there. I was at the Astro World and doing the medicine shows. So I was always acting.
Yeah.
And then, so when the acting opportunities arise, I had a big leg up on a lot of comics because I had an acting background.
Wow.
So, and that's the night when I went to Los Angeles, that segued into the Hollywood Nights, basically, which was my first movie.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. How was it working with Tony Danza in that movie?
It was great. I mean, nobody knew anybody. I mean, this was all our first movie.
Correct.
Tony had started Taxi, but everybody was Michelle Pfeiffer's first movie. It was mine, Tony Danza, a great character actor, Gaylord Sartain. Now I'm drawing a blank. Stuart Pankin, a lot of terrific people. Fran Drescher were in that movie. Yeah. So that was a great. There was a lot of it was improvised. I'll tell you that. So that was fine with me. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah. I walked out there and suddenly I'm one of the leads in a movie. That's pretty easy work. Yeah. But it didn't work out quite that way. Yeah.
And not a lot of people could say that back then.
Well, I figured for sure, this is easy, but it doesn't work that way. Yeah. When I didn't get another part for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but then from there you went on to like Good Morning Vietnam and Bull Durham and Batman.
Yeah, but that's about 6-7 years. That one was 10 years later.
Yeah.
There's a big gulf in there. Now, at the time, I was always writing.
Okay.
I was always writing. I started out as a writer, and I had auditioned for Airplane for the Zucker brothers.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the part, but they hired me to be a writer on Police Squad. So I wrote on Police Squad, which was a short-lived TV series on ABC, starring Leslie Nielsen, which eventually became the Naked Gun series. But I worked for them, and I had a little bit part in Flashdance. But I was always on the road then doing stand-up comedy to make money. Yeah. And then then Barry Levinson. Well, what changed was first getting a role in the Madonna video, Material Girl. There was a beginning of the video. There was a scene between me and Keith Carradine that was good. It just started the video, and that opened some doors. And then again, Barry Levinson, who I auditioned for Diner, and he cast me in Good Morning Vietnam, and then Bull Durham happens right. That's about 87, 88, and that's when stuff happens. That's when it starts to really. And then Batman comes in 88.
Yeah. How was it working with Robin Williams on Good Morning Vietnam? I mean, that movie is one of my favorites.
Well, I knew Robin from the clubs. So it was like we had known each other. We were friendly. We were friends. So that was great. I mean, it was a great experience being over there, and between everybody there, between Robin and the great late Bruno Kirby, and it was terrific. It was hot, but it was. Robin had not done well in movies before then, but this was a vehicle that was just so designed for him, and Barry was the right guy to direct it, and the story was good, and they let Robin improvise, and it's a really well-made movie. They've been playing it a lot on cable lately, I understand. And I asked people if it held up, and they say, yeah, it holds up pretty good. Yeah. So, and of course, to watch Robin now Robin was special. You come across a few special people in your life, and Robin Williams was one of them. He was as good a guy, as good a human being as great a talent as he was. He was very special. I miss Robin.
Yeah, and he's one of the best for stand-up comedy too.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah. I know you're a huge baseball fan. How excited were you when you got cast for Bull Durham?
Oh, that was great. I mean, Bull Durham was a blast. Ron Shelton said I gave what's maybe the worst single audition in history, and he said hire him immediately because I was all over the place. The character didn't have many lines. He only had like 4 or 5 lines in the whole script.
Yeah.
And so actually, I can credit a lot of my career to that to Bruno Kirby, because we had done Good Morning Vietnam together, and I called him up, and he was my acting guru occasionally. And I'd say, Bruno, here's this pitching coach, and what's the character? And he goes, well, it seems to me that the pitching coach is the adjunct of the manager. If the manager moves up, he moves up. So, so I said, okay, I got it. He's a yes man. So I could my dad had played ball and was an athlete, so I knew all the jargon of the hum baby, come on, no batter, that kind of stuff. So I went in there and just took the room and just was all over the place. No batter, hey. And I started just doing all this stuff, and thank God they hired me, because it was horrible. Yeah. And Ron said the worst audition I've ever seen. In fact, the casting director apologized for bringing me in. And then Ron said, great, hire him immediately, because I need that. What he's going to bring is going to be a different dimension,
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
And plus, it's a terrific movie. Bull Durham is a really good movie. I mean, that's one. Like I said,
What was that?
that's one to be proud of. One to be proud of.
Oh yeah, I mean there's a lot of baseball movies out there, but there's only like top 3 or 4 that hold out to me. That's one of them. What?
Yeah, I would agree.
What? So you got casted at Batman. That was one of the biggest movies in the late '80s. How was it being in something like that?
Dynamite. It was great. We shot it in London. It was the highest budgeted movie of all time at that point. I mean, you had Jack Nicholson. You had, at its peak, you had Michael Keaton coming off of Beetlejuice. You had Tim Burton coming off of Beetlejuice, and you had this amazing set and this designers, and it was pretty, and it was dark. People forget how dark the original Batman. They had only, they were trying to compare it to the Adam West Batman, which I did not like because it was too jokey. This was a darker take on Batman. Not as dark as The Dark Knight, which is, I think that's generational, though. I think that I just think everything went much darker after 9/11. I just think apocalypse. I mean, I once asked a class of students, why are there so many apocalypse movies? And he answered me, well, we all grew up after 9/11, so it's not. And I thought, well, that's an interesting point. But I would personally, the thing about the Batman movies is, especially that series of Batman movies, starting with the Tim Burton one, is that every hour of the Batman series, I think there was like 5 movies there, got continually worse. It was like the first hour of the first Batman movie is really good. The second hour is pretty good. Then you have the next Batman, the one with Danny DeVito, and that's okay. Yeah. And the next second hour of that one is like, okay. And then it starts getting really crappy. Then you got the George Clooney one, and you got the Val Kilmer one, and they start getting really crappy. And until the new wave came with the Dark Knight. The thing about the Dark Knight series, for my taste, and this is strictly my own humble opinion, is there's no question of the artistry involved. I don't think they're any fun. Again, it goes back to the darker tone. Yeah. I don't find them fun. Where Tim Burton was whimsical. He was still fun.
Yeah.
That's my take. That's my take, and I'm older.
Yeah.
So that's an older generational talk.
Yeah. So. I agree with that. Like I said, I remember going to the movie theaters to see that when I thought it was, fantastic for its time. So how did you come up with the idea for Arliss?
I was approached by HBO, who I'd done a bunch of work with. Mike Tolan had come up with an idea, a producer, and he had come up with an idea for doing a Spinal Tap of sports. Spinal Tap had opened up, and he wanted to do a Spinal Tap of sports, a parody of sports stuff. So HBO, they told him to talk to me because I had done work with HBO. I had a relationship with HBO. And I thought, well, I've seen the Spinal Tap of sports on the Muppets, the Spinal Tap of Wimbledon, and stuff like that. I said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to do a mini-series of satire on the world of sports as told through the eyes of a self-serving sports agent. Sports agents were just barely coming into the spotlight because of like Brian Taylor signing with the Yankees and you heard about sports agents suddenly coming into it, and there's been some shenanigans of people paying people under the table, and I thought I could. What's funny is I used as my template the Art of the Deal, the Trump book, because I see, if you look at the Arliss show, if you look at the cover of the book, Arliss, and it comes out of a book, it's the Trump book. It's Arliss, the Art of the Sports Super Agent.
Yeah.
Because I always thought back then, this is 95, 96, I thought Trump was full of shit back then, because I didn't believe a thing in this book. But I said, he's spinning it his way. So I said, that's what I'll do. I'll spin it Arliss's way, at least in the beginning. And so we decided to do that. And then we realized that for it to become a business model, it had to be more than a mini-series. It had to become a series. And that's how it came about.
That was on for, 6 years?
7 seasons.
7 seasons. Yeah. And did you enjoy every minute of that?
Yeah, a lot of work, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me a little bit of, like, do you think, like, the movie Jerry Maguire took the idea from you?
No, they were going on at the same time.
Okay.
They were totally going on at the same time. Not at all. Yeah. Jerry Maguire, we came on in, I think 96, I think we came on in 96, like in the, I'm guessing, I don't even remember. I'll say the late spring of 96. And Jerry Maguire came out in the summer of 96 or stuff like that. Yeah. So, no, no, not at all.
The Man Cave Chronicles on Twitter at the MCC Podcast. We'll be right back.
Rotoware.com.
Rotoware.
Big shout out to the Rotoware company.
It's so goddamn comfortable.
Can't recommend them enough, man.
Yeah.
High quality t-shirts.
Shout out to Rotoware.com.
You see me rocking the shirts on the videos and stuff like that.
Where'd you get that?
Rotoware.
That is courtesy of Rotoware.
It's just the highest quality of shirts.
Yeah, I really like the baseball designs you got here.
The shirt is beautiful.
Everybody who I've talked to who has the shirt basically says they can't believe how good the quality is.
Yeah, kid, I've seen you've been getting a lot of love. You said you've been only running for a little over a month.
CBS guys are tweeting out shirts. I'm seeing fantasy personalities everywhere digging this guy's shirt.
I love the Run DFS shirt.
It comes with baseball cards with all the different shirts on it.
Rotoware on Twitter. Check out rotoware.com.
Oh my God, is this shirt making love to me right now? Like, what's going on? I love this shirt.
Hey, this is Keith Coogan, Brad, and the Adventures of Babysitting, Kenny in downtown Lawn, Babysitter's Dad, and you're listening to the Man Cave Chronicles podcast.
Not at all, never.
So I know that you're a big history buff. What was that man? You did a one-man show called "Assume the Position" with Mr. Wall.
Yeah, that was fun. I wanted to do something after Arliss. I went to HBO and said, I think there's a way to do a history thing that might be funny and really informative and have a lot of fun with. And they let me do this thing. So, and it turned out pretty damn well. We shot it at NYU, and it was basically, history as pop culture. And it's probably to this day, it's the best received thing I've ever done. As far as, it got Writers Guild nominations, and I get it all the time. They study it in China, which amazed me. They had these students studying the thing in China. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that a lot. We did 2 of them. I was going to do a 3rd of them, but the management changed at HBO, and so it hasn't found a home. Yeah. So, but I enjoyed that a lot.
Do you think if you weren't in the acting business, you would have became like a professor or a teacher?
Perhaps. I mean, I might have become a travel agent, or I would like to got into the front office of a baseball team actually back then, but it had to be a big market. I would like to, I don't know. The teacher, at least you perform some. I did do substitute teaching for a while. I was a very popular substitute teacher. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I would enjoy that. Yeah. But the thing is, like when people came up to me on Assume the Position, said, "Boy, if I had a teacher like you, I would have learned a lot." And I always remind them, if you had a teacher like me, I'd probably be thrown out of school because somebody would complain to their parents about what I was teaching.
So, I mean, you've had an amazing career. Like, what's the most proudest thing you achieved?
Just the whole of the whole thing. I don't have any. I enjoyed pretty much. I mean, I really enjoyed Arliss. I enjoyed Assume the Position. I enjoyed all the movies I did. I did the people I've worked with, people I've learned from. I can't say anything one specific. Yeah. I don't know. I just take the whole entirety of it.
Yeah. So So I know you've written with Billy Crystal, and you won 2 Emmys. How was it with that?
That was another great moment. That was something else. We worked on the first. He saw me in a club. Actually, this was during the lean years. When I was doing the lean year, I was doing stand-up, and I got an opportunity. My manager was Carl Reiner's uncle, even though he was considerably younger than Carl. But he was Carl Reiner's uncle, and Carl's wife, Estelle Reiner, had a cabaret act. And so Carl was looking for a comic to open for her at a local club. So he said on my tape, Carl said, yeah, him. And I went on. I didn't even know if I wanted to do it. But again, I did it. And in the audience the first night was everybody from Mel Brooks and Ann Bancroft and Chris Guest and Rob Reiner and everybody. And there was Billy Crystal and Janice. And so I had known Billy's manager for quite a while, David Steinberg. And when Billy got his chance he got offered to host the Grammys, they called me and said, would you like to work with Billy on this? I said, sure. So we started a relationship, and we did the Grammys for, I think, 3 years, and then we segued to the Oscars, which I did the first 3 years. And it was just me and Billy the first year. I mean, nowadays I got 15 writers, but it was just me and Billy, and then Bruce Valanche joined us, and also Mark Shaman helped with all the musical stuff. But it was just us, and we did that for 3 years, and that's the Jack Palance year and everything else. And then I started to do Arliss, so I wasn't available for the next couple of years. But I love that. The great thing about doing the Oscars is that, for better or worse, your work's going to be seen, because you do a lot of work in our business, and a lot of people don't see it. Now, it's better now because you can DVR it, or you can, get it on Netflix or whatever. But back then you couldn't. So, with rare exceptions. But at least you knew people were going to watch the Oscars, so they were going to judge you the next day. And so we worked very hard at that, and it was great. I loved it. Like I said, I have 2 Emmy Awards because of Billy Crystal.
So I know you said you're calling from New York, and from what your publicist said to me, that you're doing a play out there. What is the play that you're doing out there?
Well, I'm actually calling from New York, but we're doing a play at the famous Paper Mill Playhouse in Millburn, New Jersey, which I grew up 5 minutes from. We're doing the musical version of The Sting, the great old Paul Newman, Robert Redford movie, with Harry Connick Jr., who is just a great guy in every stretch of the imagination, artistically and personally. And we're doing it out there for a pre-Broadway engagement, getting all the kinks out and tightening it up. It's like spring training. It really is. Yeah. And it's pre-season. But, and audiences are really liking it. But we're working it out, and it's going to be it's very good now. It's going to get a lot better.
Yeah. How long you been there?
Well, we started rehearsals in mid-February, and we moved to the Paper Mill. We had our preview started March 29th, and we end August 29th with the performances. So we have 2 more weeks to go.
So now, lastly, I know you're a huge baseball fan. What are your thoughts this year?
Well, what are my thoughts? It's very early, but Boston has a very, very, very good ball club, a very complete ball club, more so than the Yankees. Yeah. Everybody was, touting the Yankees, and the Yankees have a good ball club, but they got, from my taste, it might be too many. They have too many guys who swing and miss. Too many guys. You can't win with a team that's striking out 10 times a game. When people say, "Oh, look at the power," I go, "Well, wait a minute. They out-homered the Red Sox by 50 home runs last year, and the Red Sox beat them by 5 games." Yeah, the Yankees got hot during the playoffs, and Cleveland crumbled. But you can't count on that. The Red Sox have a more complete team. They have a better starting rotation, and I think they're a more complete team. They can manufacture a run. I don't see the Yankees doing much of that. Yeah. As far as that, the surprise team here's the Mets so far.
I know.
The Mets, first of all, as you have to be, they've been relatively healthy, as any team has to be. They've lost a catcher, but he's not a big integral part of their team. But the pitching's been outstanding. Now, we always knew the Mets had great talent, but could they stay healthy? And so far they are. So far they've been pretty damn good. And they're winning close games. Something I saw, for example, the Yankees. Chapman, Arliss has 2 saves. That's it. He's got 2 saves for the year, which tells me the Yankees are either winning 10-0 or they're losing the games where they're close. And that's what I'm talking about as far as manufacturing runs are coming from behind. Yeah. The Mets have been very good. They're getting timely hitting. They're fortunate the Nationals have got off to a slow start. So they've been interesting. Both teams have new managers, as do the Red Sox. I think, let's see, in the Central, I think that'll be I still think Cleveland's going to win.
Yeah.
Minnesota is a promising team. In the West you have Houston for sure, but the Angels sure are exciting. I mean, the Ohtani factor has changed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changed a lot of stuff that, and it's not just Ohtani that, it's like Trout now has Justin Upton hitting behind him. You got Ian Kinsler and Zach Cozart. Yeah. And the fact that they're on a 6-man rotation, which allows Ohtani to pitch one day a week. See, here's the thing. If you don't win your division, like I tell my goddaughter actually works for the Yankees. If you don't win your division, that means you're placing your season in a 1-game playoff where you're either going to face Verlander, Ohtani, or Berrios of Minnesota.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that position.
I agree.
Because that's what you're looking at. That's what you're looking at if you don't win your division. In the National League, I still expect the Dodgers to do well. I'm not as much on the bandstand as everybody else. Chicago, I still believe, will, at the end of the day, probably win the division, but that's a good division. Pittsburgh's been a surprise, a huge surprise. Yeah. I'm glad because my manager's from Pittsburgh, and I have a deep fond. If you had never been to that ballpark, PNC Park, go.
Yeah.
That's probably the prettiest ballpark in all of baseball. That park is outstanding. Yeah. That's a great ballpark. That one in San Francisco are the two, not counting Camden, which is the original. And then I'm taking Fenway and Wrigley in another category. But out of these generational ballpark, PNC is gorgeous and small. But Pittsburgh's doing well. That should be a pretty good race because Milwaukee's got a pretty good club. Cincinnati's out of it. And in the East, Atlanta's better, but I don't know if they'll contend. So I think it's still the Mets and the Nationals. So that's the way I'm looking at it right now. I'm just watching those teams because a lot of teams. And then, of course, that's the teams now are not the teams that you're going to see in August, September. Because the Yankees aren't going to be the same team. They're going to make big resource moves.
Yeah.
And, Boston's not going to be the same team necessarily. Dodgers won't be. Cubs, so they have resources.
Yeah.
That's the advantage of big market teams. I mean, last year they talked about the parity, but meanwhile, the last 4 teams were Houston, Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago. So it's the 4 biggest markets in the country.
Yeah.
So, so when they talk about parity, let's take a step back here and look at it.
I know you're a huge Yankees fan. What did you think of the Aaron Boone signing?
I'm a baseball fan. I'm not a Yankee. I'm a Yankee fan because here's why. I'm a Yankee fan because I live by a motto that says life is always better when the home team wins. I grew up being a Yankee fan because I was a kid. And it was Mantle O'Mara's time. But I root for the Angels. I root somewhat for the Dodgers, less so. I root for the Mets too. So life is better when the home team wins. Everybody's happier. Yeah. And I don't mean just in sports. I mean in business, in politics, in family. Life is better when the home team wins.
Yeah.
So it's better. Everybody feels better about themselves. Everybody's in a better mood. The Aaron Boone signing, it's what did I think? I thought it was out of the box for sure. And then again, you look at it, is it out of the box with today's thinking? I don't think baseball's changed that much. I get into constant debate with my friend Brian Kenny on all this sabermetric stuff because there's no doubt the statistics, sabermetrics are important. But it's a tool. That's all it is. You're not playing fantasy baseball.
Yeah.
This is real. I mean, for example, according to wins above replacement, that stupid stat, Luis Valbuena is better than Albert Pujols. That's absurd.
Yeah.
That's absurd. And I go, when Pujols has averaged 100 RBIs the last 4 years, people don't realize this. He's averaged 100 RBIs. He's like fifth and sabermetrics will say, yeah, but he's got Trout in front of him and so on. So I go, wait a minute. Home runs and RBIs count. On-base percentage doesn't count. There's no. When I look at the scoreboard, on-base percentage is not on the line score. A run counts. Yeah. An RBI counts. A home run counts. On-base percentage, wins above replacement does not count. Yeah. It's like, don't lose sight of this fact. I watched yesterday, in 11 games, I was talking this over with somebody, how the bullpen either blew a ball game or came close to blowing the ball game in 11 games because they take the starter out after 5 innings.
Yeah.
You can't ask bullpens to hold 4 innings a game and do that consistently. Yeah. You can do that in the World Series maybe because it's a short series and everybody's gassed because everybody's pitched too many innings. Yeah. But you can't do that during a season. I'm sorry. This whole idea of it's a tool. Don't get me wrong. It's a tool. It's a tool to be learned, but you're not playing fantasy baseball. Yeah. You still have to manufacture runs. You have to do things that don't show up in the box score. Yeah. Do that. That's my feeling anyway.
Yeah. I remember like growing up, I was watching these pitchers pitch, they would go 7-8 innings. It's like, what happened to all that all of a sudden?
9 innings.
9. Yeah, you're right. Even 9 innings, yeah. Now they can...
Jack Morris, Roger Clemens.
Yeah.
Come on. These guys went 9. Verlander's a throwback to that.
Yeah.
You got a guy who goes 5 innings. I mean, I've heard this quality stat. Here's a quality start. Stupidest stat ever.
Yeah.
6 innings, 3 runs is a quality start. Why is that a quality start? That's a 4.5 ERA. That's saying that the bullpen doesn't give up any runs. Yeah. By the way, so you're pitching 2/3 of the game. You're pitching to a 4.5. You're not going to win many games at a 4.5 ERA. Yeah. You're not going to win. You're not a championship. You won't make the playoffs. So why is it a quality start? Let me ask you a question. If you had a pilot and an airplane who went 2/3 of the flight and said, "Okay, I'm turning it over to another guy," it's like that ain't that good. That is such a stupid stat. And that's saying the bullpen's going to be perfect, which they're not.
I agree.
You have to have a deep bullpen, no doubt. Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. But you can't. 6 innings. Most teams would settle for 6 innings now.
Yeah. I know you mentioned fantasy baseball. Do you play that?
Yes.
Yeah. How many leagues are you in?
I'm in 1 and in last place as we talk.
I'm in 3, and yesterday, all those rain delays yesterday killed me.
Yeah, I only play in 1 league. I used to play in more. I used to be in celebrity leagues and the Sirius XM host league, and I only go to my 1 league, which I've been in forever, because I like the league. I like the categories they use. They don't use any gypsy categories, as I call them. Yeah. I mean, we don't count strikeouts. I think strikeouts are really overrated. Yeah. We count innings pitched, which is funny because I see more and more innings pitched is much more important. Much more. What's more important? Because we try to emulate real baseball. What would be more important? A guy who comes in and strikes out 6 guys but only goes 4 innings, or a guy goes 7 innings and strikes out 2.
Right.
It's like strikeouts is just. I think it's a secondary category. Outs.
I agree.
Out. And the whole idea that a strikeout, from an offensive point of view, that a strikeout is an out is not true. If you strike out, you have advanced, you have helped your team in no way, shape, or form. If you get an out and you get a ground ball that moves a runner over, a fly ball, or you move something around, or whatever, and that changes the game. Yeah. But strikeout does not help your team whatever. No. So you're going to have, so that's what I feel. But right now, I'm in last place. My pitching staff has been terrible, which is usually the case when you have when you're in last place. My offensive, my guys have all underperformed so far. It's very early. Altuve, Travis Shaw, Scope goes on the DL, Jay Bruce, Will Myers on the DL. So I also have Trout. So I got a pretty good offensive club. Yeah. I have, and Didi's been my best player. I love Didi.
Yeah. Well, he went off. Was it last week when he had like 2 home runs, or the week before?
Yeah, well, Didi was my long shot pick for an AL MVP. It's a Didi, but it probably won't be, but good long shot pick.
You never know. All right, is anything else you want to tell the listeners before we end this?
No, I had a great time.
And how can they find you on social media?
God, I hope they don't. I think I'm on Twitter. I think. I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook. So that's about it.
I'd like to personally thank you for coming on. This was a blast.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Man Cave Chronicles. Follow them on Twitter @the MCC Podcast. We'll catch you next time.